Everyone, welcome back to the podcast Journey to Well. We're going to have a really fun conversation today. I think I might have met someone that's more obsessed about cycles than I am. So, this is Elizabeth. She and I met through Instagram, connected through Instagram for purposes of this podcast. If this is the first podcast you've hopped on, we always do a little human design conversation at the end. So I like to introduce at the beginning all of my guests human design profile. So Elizabeth is a emotional authority, a 2-5 manifesting generator. We'll get all into that later. If that means nothing to you, that's totally fine, because this podcast is human design beginner friendly. But if you know a little bit about manifesting generators, as we are having a conversation, maybe you can make some extra connections, because I too am a Manny Gen. I'm a 1-3 sacral authority. So we have a lot of differences, but we still have that energy. So anyway, let's get into cycles. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm super excited to have you and learn more about your business, what got you into talking about cycles and normalizing these conversations about periods. But first, I would love for you to give a little intro. Who is Elizabeth? Whatever you want to share with us. There's no to-do list or any checklist that you have to check off with your intro, but who's Elizabeth?
Awesome. Hello, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks so much.
Mm.
I am Elizabeth Tidwell, and I am a womb guide and cycles coach. So I work with women and menstruators and girls about to start their periods, all about helping everyone, like you're saying, normalize periods, normalize bodies, normalize what we go through, and also just reclaiming the menstrual cycle as a source
Mm.
of wisdom and power, which honestly, I feel like culturally was totally stripped from us and we were like separated from that. So to me, this is a hugely important work to help us step back into deep relationship with our bodies. So that's what I
Mm.
do.
Mm. I love that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that it's something that we are afraid to talk about
Mhm.
and that we think is gross, and from men and women. So we're gonna get all into that, but I'm curious. Let's start at the beginning. What made you interested about talking about cycle periods, and then founding your own business? What's a little bit about your background there?
Yeah. Uh, my background was exactly opposite of what I'm doing
Okay.
now. As a child, I was like very tomboy, not feminine
Mm.
at all, very, very disconnected from my body. Um, did not like being a girl. I feel like I sensed very early on that like culturally and even like safety wise, it'd be better if I were a boy in our
Mm.
society. Like,
Mm.
also I was surrounded by brothers, and like I said, it just felt like that would be better. So I was a huge tomboy. I did not like being a girl. I didn't like anything girly. I totally
Mm.
rejected that huge whole component of myself, right?
Okay.
So from that foundation, that obviously impacted how much um how deeply or superficially my relationship with myself could be. Like, you can
Mm.
only show up in your life as complete as you are willing to show up for yourself, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I was walking around my life for like, a couple decades, not realizing that I was missing so much by kind of like just neglecting this and kind of
Yeah.
dismissing the side of me as weak or less important or frivolous. I mean, we get so many cultural messages that about what femininity is, about what being a girl or a woman is like, and I didn't
Mm.
like those messages and I knew it.
Okay.
And so I just was like, yeah, I'm not going to be that, not realizing that I had any other option, right? That I
Mm.
could still embrace my feminine nature without embracing what that meant in society, if that made sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's like where I came from is very much not the work that I'm doing now.
Mhm.
If you would have told me when I was younger or even like 5 years ago that I would be talking all the time, every
Yeah.
day about menstrual cycles, I would have been like, yeah, right. Because
Right.
Yeah, that was not me. But now I'm like the reason my like huge why is because yeah, kind of like what I've been saying. It mattered so much to me to finally accept and love and appreciate and like kind of
Mhm.
like this radical acceptance of the parts of me that I had previously viewed as like liabilities,
Yeah.
as things I wished I could change. Now they are huge sources of power and depth and wisdom. And so now I just show up in my life so much differently, and I have a
Mm.
way different relationship with myself, which means I can have a way different relationship with my daughter and like all
Mm.
the people in my life, all the important relationships, because the most important relationship is so much deeper with myself than it ever was
Yeah.
before. So that is a huge driver. When I discovered that for myself, I'm like, I'm absolutely invested in helping as many other people do this too, because I know that I'm not alone in having this disconnect from this
Mhm.
aspect of ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. We spent a lot of time, I think, slowly. For me, it was like a slower disconnect, I think, throughout my younger years. And
Mhm.
then even even college, I think high school and college for sure. It was like this slow disconnect until I finally came to this realization where I'm like, I am so disconnected and
Yeah.
there's so many things talking about feminine masculine energy, like let's dive into that. What all of the stereotypes of what it looks like to be feminine or what it should look like to be feminine. And then even all of the stereotypes around your period that it's gross and it's a time
Yep.
that you're just super moody and you're really
Mhm.
like touchy and emotional and or really tired
Mhm.
like and I just have to push through this lack of energy. So many stereotypes to be looked at there. I'm curious, one of my favorite questions to ask is like why talk about this, why learn about this, what is the benefit, I guess we could say? Where is the power of learning about cycle alignment and
Yeah.
learning your cycle?
Yeah, I think it's huge because it's gonna feel foreign
Mm,
to most of us, especially at the
mhm,
beginning, because we live in a culture that is not cyclical like we inherently are. We live in a
okay,
very linear culture. We live in a very um, male hormonal cycle culture. Everything is built around the male hormonal pattern. So we are just used to overriding our natural rhythm. So,
mhm,
of course, that's what feels normal because that's what we've
okay,
always been expected to do. So, it's so important to do that because to push against that and discover your own cyclicality and then begin to be in relationship with your cyclicality. Because it's so fascinating what can happen when you start realizing, oh, my patterns over my particular cycle actually can set me up for so much more um wisdom. They can set me up
mhm,
for so much more capacity. They can set me up for so much like just harnessing my natural highs and lows in a way that makes me show up differently and
yeah,
more resourced. So
mhm,
I think that is at its heart very important, is to realize that what we experience matters. Every single
mhm,
one of us, what we experience matters. A lot of us really discount, especially when it comes to the menstrual cycle. A lot of us are like, well, I've had a period for 10, 20, 30 years. I'm used to it. I know what to expect. It's whatever. I deal with it in my own way. I don't need to make a big thing of it.
yeah,
It's just whatever. But it matters. Like
mhm,
everything that we experience absolutely impacts how we go about our lives, right? So
yeah,
it's just this hugely untapped source of self-knowledge. And
mhm,
when we can tap into our own rhythm, we can totally uncover what it's like to align with our own capacities rather than always feeling like we have to be fit into the outside structures that do not take
mhm,
into account what we are actually able and capable of doing. Like So
Mm.
for an example, if you have a task that you want to do, like the other day I'm reworking my website and it was the day before my period started. And I was like, I only have the capacity to do this for about 30 minutes tops. And
Mm.
I have to stop. Like, this is not easy for me. This is working against where I
Yeah.
naturally am. At that point, all I wanted to do was be alone, turn off my brain, kind of be doing way more like self-connecting things. And that's called The Void by my mentors, Alexandra Pope and Shani Hugo Wurlitzer, because it's like that's when we just feel this call to separate. So that is
Yeah.
not the optimal time to be like
Yeah.
working with your web designer and on these like high level brainy things where I'm like totally restructuring. And so I just didn't have that capacity. At a different time of my cycle, I absolutely will have that capacity and it'll come easier and it'll feel less effortful and it'll feel
Yeah.
more fulfilling. This, I was like so proud of myself for doing it, even against my capacity, because I had to, because I was like,
Yeah.
I'm on a time constraint. Anyway, so like we have to do things that aren't always in
Right.
alignment, but knowing that it wasn't going to be in the most alignment with me, I've set up times for later in my cycle to come back and make sure that still is how I want it to be. And I also gave myself lots of buffers. I set a timer and I'm like, I can only do this for this amount of time, and then it's going to be too much for me. And then
Mhm.
before that, I gave myself some buffers. So I spent some time alone and just like,
Mm.
chill time so I could feel spaciousness instead of feeling like maxed out of capacity, since I knew that I would have to do that kind of hard mental labor when it wasn't going to be easy for me. So hopefully
Mm.
that's like a quick example of in real time,
Mhm.
one that it'd be easier at a different time in my cycle, and there's nothing wrong with that. Two,
Mhm.
sometimes we do have to work against, quote unquote, against our cycles because of external factors.
Yeah.
But there are ways to support ourselves to make that easier. But if we don't have that basic awareness in the first place, there is no way that we can support ourselves as well as we need. And also, like, to me, it just opens up like to there's this is the root of negative self-talk is we just want ourselves to be different
Yeah.
and we want ourselves to align with what other people expect from us. We want ourselves to be the same every day because that's
Mhm.
the societal expectation, right? If we can take that unnecessary framework away
Mm.
and show up for ourselves better, immediately you're thinking about yourself with more compassion. You're thinking about
Yeah.
yourself with more um, self-knowledge and just, yeah, it really
Mm.
transforms how you conceive of things like productivity and capacity, which
Yeah.
of course ripples out into how you show up for other people. And like I just don't expect other people to, be showing up with the same capacity every day. I expect that the things that they travel through, whether they have a cycle or not, are impacting them as well. And
Mm.
that is to me a way better way to be in relationship and to like
Mm.
navigate the world. And so I love that this has such huge impacts on an individual level. I think so much change starts when we love ourselves more, understand ourselves
Mm.
more, treat ourselves with more compassion. And then, of course, that means the more of us doing that in the world is going to be better, which is, I
Mm.
love it. I just love it so much.
Wow. You said so much great stuff there, and I couldn't agree more with all of it. One of the things that you brought up was the expectation of being very consistent, staying the same, like living linearly.
Mhm.
And I think that was one of the most challenging things in my face when I started learning about cycle and then practicing living in alignment with my cycle is challenging. And it's not from this place of like hatred or judgment, but simply I think there's a lot of power in asking yourself the question, does it have to be the same every single
Yes.
day? Do I
Yes.
have to be the same every single day? A big part of my cycle journey actually started with working out. And I was someone that would work out 6 days a week because you have to take one rest day, right? 6 days a week, 30 or 31 days a month,
Right.
all the way through my cycle, especially even when I was bleeding, even in my luteal phase. And working out, I mean weight training. So I would go to the
Mhm.
gym, which is very masculine energy, just
Mhm.
being around all of those people.
Mhm.
And that whole notion, when we hear, especially from the fitness industry, like, you have to stay consistent, you have to work out every single day, go harder than the person next to you. If you miss a day, then you're lazy or you're inconsistent.
Yeah.
And this can be applied to everything.
Yes.
I just use fitness because that's a part of my journey, but please know it can be applied to everything. So a big part of my journey was actually just questioning, what if I didn't weight lift every day? What is my why behind that? Why do I want to exercise every day? And really, my why behind that is because I love my body, I want to be healthy, and I want to move my body. So when I pull out that why from that curious place, it's like, okay, so do I have to go to the gym every single day? What if I just moved my body every single
Mhm.
day in the way that my body was asking to move? Because
Yes.
your body will ask you to move in different ways depending on where you are in your cycle. And really, that was kind of the beginning of my journey, is just starting there. And then exploring, okay, what if I don't go to the gym today? Or what if I just check in with myself and see if I want to go to the gym? Is that where my energy wants to go? And I loved something else you said was, or how I would say it, is like living in flow and you're not going against the grain. So realizing with your website work, there could be a better time of the month that I can do this. And when possible, of course, it's not always possible, like you said, when possible, rearranging the schedule a little bit to better serve you and your energy levels, and realizing that you're never not gonna do, like, for me, it was like I had this fear of, like, if I don't go every day, then I'm never gonna go. So
Mm.
realizing, like, if I take a rest day, that you are gonna feel productive again, like,
Mhm.
especially in the bleed, right? Like, if you're taking a rest day while you're bleeding, spring comes, my friend, you're gonna get
Yes.
that energy back for sure. And then, yes, how much more can I, as I expand my capacity for grace and flexibility and leaning into flow, then I'm able to give that invitation and that permission to other people to slow down or honor themselves. So if somebody cancels their plans, where maybe once I used to be like, that person's such an asshole for canceling their plans, I'm like, yo, like, I get it. And now people, like, now, like, since I talk about cycle all the time, my friends and I have that conversation and they're like,
Yep.
listen, I can't. I just got my period. I can't do it. I'm like, I hear you. See
Yes.
ya.
Love
See
it.
ya.
I'm here
See ya
for
next
that.
week. Like, so here
Yes.
for it. And introducing that conversation in my small group and
Mhm.
allowing that ripple to come out, which you do so beautifully on your Instagram channel. And your community is really leading through example. And I think, the more we learn, the more permission we can give ourselves. I think the
Mhm.
more that we learn, like, oh, I'm not so different, or this person has gone through it and I can go through it too.
Yeah, that's huge. And
Yeah.
again, when it is something that is breaking the mold for what
Yes.
we've been shown so far. So it is so important to me to show up and show people this is how you do it. This is what it looks
Mm.
like when you can optimize the time and you can make changes according to your cycle. And this is what you can do when you can't, to the things that you can't do. So like I'm a mom, I can't not mom during my period. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
not an option. But I can know when it's coming and I
Yeah.
can make lots of different ways that my menstrual phase is much more supported and my daughter is still being cared for
Mhm.
at the capacity that I have at that point, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it is very important to show up and say, this is how we can do this. And also knowing that Um, well, I think culturally we have all viewed bodies as just kind of like meat lockers for our brains, right? They're just
Yeah.
like things that we control, things that we have to get to work for us, things that we are constantly working against, right?
Mm,
Because of what we want in our brains. But I love that you highlighted that we can ask our body
yeah.
what it wants. And then the other thing is like this this relationship of trust comes when we realize, oh gosh, taking one day off is not going, I can trust myself. I can trust
Yeah.
my body that a rest means nothing as far as my moral feelings. It just means rest
Yeah.
today. And tomorrow it might be different.
Yeah.
Um I think we all just walk around trusting way more in our brains than in our
Mhm.
bodies and not realizing that we are sitting on a gold mine of wisdom that we
Yeah.
can't access through our brains alone. Like there is so
Yeah.
much that our bodies will tell us if we, as soon as we learn the language of our body, which a lot of times it's communicating through our cycles. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I think that is so important. And also one last thing in response to that awesome bit you just shared, there was lots in there that was really important, but I really also wanted to highlight that everybody's cycle is different, and even your own cycle can be different in different months depending on
Yeah.
a whole bunch of things. So again, I think our cultural tendency is to want a structure, is to want
Mhm.
like we culturally think that structure is just inherently better. That's a very, again, we're coming from a very masculine society. So it's like, I just want to know when to do what. Tell me exactly. And
Yeah.
that is not, um, just not how cycles work. Like I just really want to highlight that cycle awareness is not another way for us to beat ourselves into another box, right? It's not another way for us to say, oh gosh, it's day 14. Why am I not feeling XYZ? That's how everyone is supposed to feel on day 14. That's just not how it is. Or that's how I felt on last day 14. Like cyclical awareness and this practice is so awesome because it helps you release rigidity, unnecessary restriction, which I think, again, culturally, we have just viewed as superior and safer, and easier. Like it is easier. It is easier if we could, just know that clearly. And a lot of times, the more you do this, the more you will get used to your own rhythms. But
Mhm.
also, let me share another quick thing that happened to me this past cycle.
Mm.
And I've been practicing cyclical awareness for a couple years. So like I have many months of accumulated wisdom. So I know my cycle pretty well. I know what's normal. For me, I this past cycle experienced ovulation pain, which I don't think that I ever had
Hmm.
experienced before. It was pretty pronounced. It felt similar to like my period was about to come. And I
Hmm.
was like, okay, this is way out of the ordinary for me. Um but I was able to view that cycle as, instead of like being freaked out about my body, instead of being like, okay, so what disease do I have, Dr. Google? Instead of being like, okay, am I pregnant? Like I knew that this was out of the ordinary for me and my
Yeah.
cycle. For some people it's not. Some people get ovulation pain more frequently. For me it was totally out of the blue. But I looked back at what the past 3 cycles had been like, and that's I have been more busy the past 3 months
Mm.
for that long of a stretch in,
Yeah.
like, 5 years, and so
Ah.
so my body was asking me through discomfort and pain, which I normally especially used to get at periods because it's begging me to slow down. I got it at ovulation to tell me, listen, if you don't slow down now, your periods are going to absolutely rock you again.
Yeah.
And so, like, now I know the language of my body. I knew that that was abnormal, and I knew immediately what message my body was sending me through ovulation
Mm.
pain, which was, hey, you got to slow down. This is not sustainable. And thankfully, I was almost at the finish line of this like intensive program I was doing. So like I knew
Mm,
that it was going to be hard going into it.
yeah.
But I was so grateful to my body to remind me, listen, you can't put me on the back burner even for a short stint. Like I'm here. I'm
Mhm.
experiencing this as well as your brain, even though it's
Mm,
like a intensive brain program, but like my body's experiencing it too.
yeah.
So, yeah, so that meant that my luteal phase looked different than my other luteal phases. That meant that what I did to support myself in my period was a little bit more than I usually do in other menstrual phases. So there is this natural, um, it must be more dynamic than
Mhm.
a rigid cage of
Yeah.
expectations. And it's again building that trust in your body that is so much more beautiful and pays way greater dividends in your relationship with yourself and your relationship with just like how life is, right?
Mhm.
Than again trying to force ourselves to be certain ways that don't feel right and good to ourselves as a whole, which includes our bodies.
Yeah, authentic. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
authentic to
Yeah.
us. And thank you for bringing up the 3 month. I looked at the past 3 months because that's something else I think important to highlight.
Mhm.
Just like you switching your diet up and starting to eat healthy, or you starting to exercise and move your body more. This is not a 1 month, let me learn everything and then expect everything to just lock into place.
Mhm.
It certainly takes a slow growth, and it's ever changing. Thank you for your example, because my phases, like especially I think especially my luteal phase, I tend to feel a lot more if I haven't done a lot to honor the past few
Yeah.
months.
Mhm.
But for me, I had this past summer, fall, like early fall, I had like the worst period cramps ever, like lying in bed, and I'm like, I feel like I'm dying.
Mm.
And and the same with you. I'm like, let's look at the past 3 months. I moved twice, different states away. I was so busy that like the entire summer just happened to be very busy, especially August. So then September, October, November show up, and I'm just like, there's a lot that's happening in the menstrual phase. So oftentimes we tend to be like, oh, well, last month wasn't super busy, or I didn't do
Mhm.
anything like crazy out of the norm last month, but extending a little bit further back, super helpful to look at. The other thing that you brought up was trust again, and I want to harp on that, or land on
Mhm.
that for another moment, because I think one of the things that happens when we grow up, just in our society, even if you look at school, like traditional American schools, and how we are taught to sit in the classroom chair and be quiet and listen to our teacher, and pay attention and learn, the teacher knows best, or like adults always know best, is we end up also unconsciously being taught that we don't know what's best for us and for our
Mhm.
bodies. And when you're a child, that makes sense, because your parents hold a lot of wisdom, your teacher holds a lot of wisdom, but there comes a time, I am finding, like, my client group that I work with is like either just going into college or getting out of college, like those
Mhm.
transitions, or like mid to late 20s. And that time comes where we're like, oh, maybe my doctor doesn't know what's best for me. Maybe I don't need to just take in everything and follow exactly what, is being told, or follow the norm, and kind of beginning to question curiously, can I go against the grain? And where trust comes into that play is that as we listen to our bodies more, we're building trust with our bodies, and that is so empowering,
Mhm.
because we are teaching and embodying, um and we're embodying trust when you honor what your body is saying or asking for. And then that, like you said, ripples out into so many different aspects of, like, especially as a business owner, like a small business owner, building that trust within myself and my business, that if I am on my period and I want to lighten my client load, I'm going to be able to pick up that slack or that difference maybe in my ovulation phase or the later follicular
Mhm.
phase, and building that trust. And like same with you talk about your child, building that trust of trusting that I am going to lighten my capacity is a little bit smaller right now, and that's okay because I know that I'm still showing up for her and I'm still showing up for my family. And there's so many ways that that can extend into
Yes.
life in general.
Yes, I love the ripples of trust, like,
Mm.
starting from a place of self-trust absolutely is gonna impact everywhere else. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to begin to wrap up, um, and get into human design briefly, like we do at the end of every episode. But I want to open the platform one last time for you. What is your most important message that you want everyone to hear? If everyone could hear it, it would make such a difference.
Yeah, I really to me, it always comes back to what you experience matters.
Mm,
Think
wow.
we just are so used to, just shrugging things off or ignoring like feelings in our bodies or our
Mm,
intuition or assuming like you were just talking about assuming other people know better for us or assuming systems know better for us or
yeah.
whatever or any aspect, but to me a huge message that I think we all need to really just sit with more is that what we experience matters.
Mm,
What we are journeying, what we are like physiologically showing up with every day
mm,
obviously has an impact on our outlook, has an impact on what capacity we have, has an impact on our emotional state. So what your body is journeying is just as important as what's going on in your head. And all of these aspects of ourselves really do matter.
mm,
I would love for us all to just like step into knowing that we matter,
mm.
and that is for sure my biggest hope.
Mm, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. That's
Mhm.
really powerful. It is. You matter. What you experience matters. And it's valid. One of the things that I always say is like, I'm experiencing or I'm feeling this way. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to feel this way
Yeah.
forever, but it matters how I'm feeling right
Yes.
now. And I need you, whoever I'm talking to, like, I need you to witness that. And I need you to hold space for that because I'm just moving through it right now,
Yeah.
and I might not feel this way later, but it's valid because
Yeah.
it's how I'm feeling in this moment.
Yeah, and I think we're really used to assuming that if something we feel matters to us doesn't matter to everyone else or someone else
Mhm.
in particular or in general, then it just of course it shouldn't matter then to me, but
Right.
it matters. It
Yeah.
matters to you, and if it matters to you, that is enough, right?
Right.
That is everything.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that automatically again starts to shift everything else, how we show up for ourselves. If we just know intrinsically what I'm experiencing matters,
Mhm.
and maybe I don't exactly know how it's going to matter in the future or why exactly it matters, but I know that I'm experiencing something and it matters, like full
Mhm.
stop. And it
Love
doesn't
it.
have to matter to anyone else. And I can't control if it matters to anybody else. But if I know that what I experience matters, then
Mhm.
that is like the foundation for nervous system regulation, safety, growth, expansion, and then again, these ripples that come from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's all connected.
Mhm,
All
mhm.
right, so let's switch gears briefly into the human design world. Remind me if you've had your chart read or you've had your birth chart read.
Just astrology natal
Okay.
chart, so I haven't done a reading for human design.
Okay. Okay. Super fun. So, yeah, human design is one of those tools like cycle alignment to me. Like we all go through cycles, even if you're a male, but especially if you're a female, we might feel the cycle a little bit more. Um, and tapping into that tool to come into alignment and live in flow is one tool. Human design is just another tool of living in alignment similar to your birth chart. This is just your unique blueprint. It's just your unique human design or design
Yep.
as a human. So you are, like I said, manifesting generator, emotional authority, 2-5 profile. Those are kind of the three biggest parts that make up human design. Obviously, we don't have time to dive into everything. So I want to start super simple because I don't think that we've really talked about manifesting generators, just that energy type. I don't think I've talked about that with any of my recent podcast guests. So that's where I'm feeling called to go. So, manifesting generators and generators make up 70% of the population. So, for those of you that are listening, there's a good chance that you have a lot of either pure generators or mani-gens in your life. We have, and I'm a manifesting generator, so that's what I'm saying is we have this unique ability to create our own energy. So, like, I like to explain to my clients, it's like you have your own electrical socket, your own electrical plug that you can plug into within your body at any time. And the easiest way to plug into that is to find what lights you up, find what excites you, what innately brings you energy. One of my best examples in my personal life is like I can be super tired, feel really drained, or just kind of feel like stuck and stagnant, like feel icky, especially with like the eclipse and the new moon we were talking about. Like just sometimes I feel very drained around the new moon, especially when I was menstruating at that time. And when I start talking about things that light me up, like human design, like nervous system regulation, breath work, cycle alignment, I can physically feel it in my body that that I gain more energy and I walk away from this conversation, let's say, like buzzing a little bit. That's what I mean when I say something lights you up. In contrast to that, walking away from conversations, from situations, from encounters that you feel like I need to go take a nap, or I feel very cloudy in your mind, maybe in like the upper parts of your body, or possibly feeling a little bit heavy in your body. Those are all opportunities to kind of question and dive a little bit deeper. What part of this is possibly out of my alignment? Another big part of manifesting generators, a feeling or an emotion to kind of trigger us into like questioning, is this out of alignment, is this not really lighting me up, is feeling frustrated. The emotion of frustration is the not self theme, is what it's called in human design, but feeling frustrated with something. So for me, a lot of times when like I feel like I'm going and I'm pushing, like going against the grain or pushing or trying to force an event, trying to force a collaboration, trying to force someone to come on my podcast, like, which I don't do anymore, but like if it feels forceful, and every time I like try to take a step forward, I find myself feeling that frustration. That would be like a good example of not being lit up. Being lit up is feeling satisfied. So
Mhm.
coming to the end of the day and feeling really satisfied, that's your self theme of a manifesting generator, is feeling satisfied, feeling complete, feeling like I always say, like, after you eat a really healthy, good meal and you just feel like really warm and just really content, that's your self theme. So I would love to hear your, like, what bits of that align with you, what bits of it you're like, I don't know if I feel this.
Um, yeah, I hate feeling frustrated.
Yeah.
It is, and I hate when like I definitely am a hard worker, but on things like I want it to be easy. Like
Mm.
I very much like I'm a Pisces sun, so I'm like a dreamer. I have like big
Ah,
visions.
okay.
So I do like to get really passionate about those visions actually coming to
Mm.
fruition, right? So, when that doesn't feel easy, when I'm not achieving the big vision dream that I can see
Yeah.
so clearly, it is so
Okay.
clear to me always. When it feels hard and feels forced, yeah, I get very frustrated because I'm like, I can see it. I know that it can happen. Why isn't it
Yeah.
happening? What the heck? Like, what
Yeah.
is going on? Yeah, so that definitely resonates.
I love it.
Um, and also the satisfaction. Yeah, like I'm I'm at this point in my life where like I yeah, I'm like I all I can do is show up exactly the way that I want to be.
Mhm.
And that is satisfaction, right?
Mhm.
Not like any sort of external circumstance or accomplishment or things like what is satisfying is how I
Yeah.
am, like how I am present in my own life, right? And so like
Mhm.
I'm getting so much satisfaction from being like, yeah, at the end of the day, nothing was perfect, but man, I showed up
Yeah.
exactly as I hoped. Like my
Yeah.
perfect. So my favorite movie is About Time. I don't know if you've seen
Mhm.
that.
No.
Oh my gosh, okay, watch it.
Okay.
But it's I won't do any spoilers because it's so good, but I feel like this is like showing up in my life exactly as I would hope to is like where he gets to at the very end of the movie, and I just think
Mm.
about that every time. It like gives me a ton of satisfaction to be like, "Yep, I lived my day exactly as I would have,
Yeah.
um, if my higher self were, you know, prancing
Wow.
around in my life." And that is I mean, obviously, it's not every single minute of every single day I'm
Yeah.
perfectly showing up, but it's like, no, my effort
Mm.
matched my capacity to be that version of me. Yeah, so
Mm.
that's like where I've been, especially lately, and it's way more satisfying
Mhm.
than focusing on any sort of external things, which, I think we all get caught up in doing that. Where like again,
Yeah.
societally, we should want or our lives should look certain ways, and it's like, no, as long as I feel that
Yeah.
I experienced my life the way that I wanted to feel, then that is satisfying to me. So yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for so many words of wisdom. You had so many little like tidbits that I just want to take and write down. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna have to go back and listen to this whole episode after after it drops. Thank you for coming on. It was really great to connect with you. Where can people connect with you? It's gonna be in the description below, but just for those of us that are hearing it and not looking at the description.
Yeah, so my website is myclubred.com, and I'm on Instagram at myclubred, and I'm also on Facebook and TikTok at myclubred. I'm most active on Instagram though, so if you're there, I'm mostly there. But yeah, everything is myclubred. That's how to find me.
Love it. Love it. That makes it easy.
Yep.
I love it. All right,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for this convo. It's great to chat with you.
Thank you so much. I loved it. It was a great start to my day, and I really enjoyed this conversation. So thanks for having
Mm.
me.